Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, and yes, I do sound nasally because right now I've got COVID. So love that for me over Christmas. I've been trying to get COVID for like 2 years so I can have a bit of time off work, but I end up getting it when I've got annual leave at Christmas, so there's nothing more I love than that. So yeah, that's me. That's pretty much me this Christmas. Yeah, I'm probably going to be coughing throughout this video. Apologies. So I thought I'd do a different video. I've actually been meaning to do a video like this for a long time, especially when I used to work as a cabin crew. I used to get asked so many questions about what it was like and loads of different things, and to be honest with you, a lot of the questions are quite the same. So I thought, why not do a video on the truths, like the good, the bad, the ugly on cabin crew, and just talk about it really. Right, so I've written it all down on my phone. I've got a big list. So I thought how I would do this video is kind of explain my experience of how I joined and how I came about it, and then talk about all the things you get asked and what's true, what's not true, what it's really like, the goods, the bads. So let's get on with it. Okay, so I was cabin crew for about 3 years and I worked for British Airways, and guys, when I say that those 3 years are probably 3 of the best years of my life, I would not take anything back for a second. Like, when I left, I had sort of like an almost immediate regret that I was like, have I done the right thing? Because I really loved the job. There were definitely points where I was so done with it and tired and didn't want to be there anymore, but I kind of thought, oh, and there's still times now, like I was so close the other day, I saw British Airways were hiring again. I was so tempted to apply for the job, but I'm in a career now and it's you know, you gotta move on, I guess. But the average lifespan of cabin crew is about 2 to 3 years anyway, maybe not even 3 years. The turnaround is so, it's constant because people get into relationships, people get lonely, they realise it's not for them. It's a very hard, strenuous job, very hard. I think everyone just thinks you're like a glorified waitress, but guys, it is flipping hard. It is such a hard job. So I applied for British Airways. God, the thing, I can't remember the exact month I applied, but I remember that the referencing part, and ask anybody who worked for British Airways, it takes so long, I think because it's quite extensive checks, and it took ages, and I remember calling them every week, like, is there any updates, is there any updates, what do you need, can I help you get further, like, done quicker. At the time I was working for Thompson, but I was working as a travel advisor, like selling the holidays, not cabin crew, and people always said to me, why didn't you go to Thompson? It's TUI now, sorry, so if you're getting confused, I still call it Thompson because that's what it was when I worked there. But people were like, why didn't you go for TUI cabin crew? But the only thing with TUI cabin crew was you had to have worked there like 2-3 years. I think it was 2 years before you could do long haul, and I really wanted to do just long haul. And although I'd worked at Thompson for 2 years, it didn't count. You had to have been cabin crew for 2 years and then you can apply. And it's also seasonal with TUI, which means that you're not guaranteed your contract for the winter, and the winter contracts usually go to the more experienced, like longer serving crew, so they would get priority. Some of the cabin crew used to come and work in the shops for the winter with us. But I just kind of wanted to go somewhere where there was a vast choice of destinations, like places I never thought I'd ever get to dream to go. So that's why I chose British Airways. Virgin was definitely on my list, but weirdly I'd applied to Virgin. They told me to go to the assessment day. It went into my junk folder and I didn't see it. But that, I always think everything happens for a reason, and although I would have liked to have worked for Virgin as well, I do think that they were more like beachy sort of destinations, where although I wanted to do that, I wanted to do like cities and unusual places as well, which British Airways did have to offer. So I applied for British Airways. It took ages, but then I eventually got the assessment day. Guys, when I say the assessment day was the scariest thing of my life, like, there was about 50 of us in there, and we had to do loads of different activities, like group exercises. We had to set, play out scenarios, what would happen if we had a complaint. We had to read off like the announcements and stuff like that. And at the end of the assessment day, there was about 50 of us, and I was on a table with a group of like 6 girls, and we were all so nervous, and none of us were getting picked. Like, all of these people were getting sent off into this other room, and when I say there was only 6 of us on a table. It was really weird that it was all of us on the same table. So about 44 people were getting picked up and going in this other room, and they were all smiling because they'd thought they'd got the job, and we thought that that was the group that had got the job at the time. And they were all, I remember them looking at us. Like, I remember this lad looking at me, and he had like a smug face, and we were all looking so sad on the table because we were like the one table that weren't getting picked for anything. Anyway, us 6 weirdly got pulled into another room, and they made it out at first like we didn't get the job, and then they were like, they said something like, guys, you know, we appreciate you've come this far, you've done really well. And we were all like, ugh. And then they were like, you guys have got the job, but be quiet because the other big group are in the next room being told that they haven't got the job. So I remember thinking, like, wow, like, out of 50 people in this room, only a handful of us got it, and I was one of them. So it is hard, the assessment day. And I remember, like, we all hugged each other in that room, and we just were crying, and we were like, oh my god, like, I can't believe we did it. But you think that that's like the hard part, but you've got so much more to go. So you do the assessment centre, and then you go to the training. The training is so extensive. Like, I can't talk about my current job, but my current job had hard training, but cabin crew was way harder. There are exams every day. It's really long days. Because British Airways go out of London Heathrow as well, I had to like pay to go up to London Heathrow, stay at this lady's house. I remember, I think I hired a room in this lady's house for about 6 weeks, maybe even longer. And you were just isolated. You were like isolated for 6 weeks. I didn't have a life. It was all revision, exams, physical training. Oh, there was just so much, and it was quite like, they try and like drill discipline into you as well, so it was quite scary at times. But that's like where I met like some of my bestest friends today. Like, some of my closest friends I met that day, day one, like in the training centre, and I still speak to all of them, and it's crazy actually. Like, they really do become your close friends, those people you train with. It's so intense, and then you get to fly with them again in the future, which is really fun. So you kind of feel like you get the training out of the way, and then it's like you feel like the worst part's over. Now for me, I feel like the worst part was the briefings before the flights. So anybody that's cabin crew that's watching this will know the anxiety of that briefing room before that flight. And the thing is, you used to get, we call them rosters, so you used to get your rosters, and it would have like what trip you're going on and who's on your trip, so you get all of the names. So eventually when you've been flying for some years, you'd see names and be like, oh, you know, I'm flying with so and so. But also you would see the manager, and if it was a nice manager, you'd be like, yes. But if it was a mean manager, you would dread it, because I felt like some managers in the briefing rooms wanted to destroy the crew. Like, it just felt like people were, it was like anything to catch you out. I'm not saying all of the briefings were like that, but the amount of anxiety, and every crew member I know had that too, because we talk about it all the time. It's because there are like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of questions on, it's like medical questions, safety questions, questions about the aircraft configuration, the doors, the slides, the M2 kits, the M5 kits, like all the medical kits that we'd have. Like, honestly guys, there was so many questions, and it's having to remember that. I always remember like crew would sneakily manage to get hold of the answer sheets that was that month, because we might have, like, say, briefing in October, there may have been a really bad medical incident, so then all of the briefings were around medical, so we all could keep on top. And I remember, like, crew would end up getting their hands on all the answer sheets and the briefing, like, questions, so we'd all kind of like memorise those to prepare. It was so funny, like, the things that would go around. It's like when I said that you would find out who was on your crew list, there was, like, it's really bad actually, but there was, like, shit lists that were sent around, like crew shit lists of crew that were horrible to fly with. Like, it's actually bullying, so it's really horrible, but you'd get it, like, some of the managers, and there would be, like, why they're so horrible, and you'd be like, oh my god, like, my worst fear was getting on that. I was like, I hope I'm never gonna be on that. But it's actually bullying, but it was crazy, like, there's so much under wraps as crew that actually goes on. It's pretty hilarious. Working for British Airways was really cool because you get so many good long haul destinations. Like, my favourite destination I think I've ever been was Bahamas. I got to go to Bahamas for a week, which was crazy. You could also bid for trips on your roster, so you could bid for, like, I did a 7-day Santiago once in Chile. That was amazing because it really gives you the time to go and explore while you're there, but you could bid for, like, when you wanted the trip. So if you wanted to have that weekend off because you had plans that weekend, you could book maybe like a 5-day trip or like a 4-day trip that would, because you would know how many days off you would need after that trip. Like, if you did a 3-day Vegas, you know you have 3 days off after, so people would bid around that, if that makes sense. And you kind of just, as you get more experience there, you know the flying hours, and there's also documents as well that tells you, like, how many days off you need for what trip and all of that. But with British Airways, because we were mixed fleet, we also had short haul as well, which is fine if it wasn't a there and back. Like, if you live in London, it's probably fine, but if you were driving all the way to London Heathrow to fly to Manchester and back, which is a half-an-hour flight, I've spent more money in petrol and, like, expenses than I have been paid that day. So you could actually unpaid leave the day, so basically say, I want to unpaid leave it, don't pay me for that day and I'm not going to come in. And you could actually do that, which was really useful. I did that quite a lot when it was there and backs. But then you would also do, like, we used to call them Euro tours, so you might do Paris for the night, then you'd fly to Barcelona for the night, and then maybe Helsinki for the night. And that was really cool because it was like you were going all around Europe for like 4 or 5 days. I really liked the Euro tours, to be fair, and it was like a smaller crew, so it was a bit more intimate, especially if you guys got on, and I really liked those. I liked doing Euro tours in the summer because I think Europe in the summer is just so pretty. The annoying thing with the rosters though is sometimes you'd have standby, and standby would be like where you just sat in the airport. We'd have, we used to call it the CRC, the Crew Report Centre, and we'd have like a Costa and a little calf and that in there, but sometimes you could literally be sat in there for, how long was standby? I think standby was 6 hours. I think it was 6 hours if you were in the airport and 8 hours if you were at home. But if you were at home and you got called off standby, like, the minimum time you got is 2 hours. So if you lived, like for me, I lived 1 hour 40, so it would be really pushing it, and that's without any traffic. So if there was traffic, I could potentially miss that. And they are very anal on times. Like, if you're on time, you're late. As cabin crew, you need to be early because your briefing starts on that minute. You can't be late because those planes can't be late, they can't wait for you. But yes, so sometimes you could be in the airport and you could be waiting around for like 6 hours just by yourself. But it was alright if you've seen your friends in there, because sometimes you just see your friends and they're on airport standby. After I think my first trip was to Kiev and a there and back, a short haul trip, and then I think I had to stand by the next day, which ended up being a Seattle long haul. So I ended up going to Seattle as my second trip, and it was my first long haul trip, and I just remember that feeling of just getting there and being like, looking like out of the crew bus, like on the way to the hotel, like in awe, because I was like, oh my god, this is my job, this is my life. I'm going to America every week, I'm going to do this, and I can't come out this weekend because I'm in Vegas, guys. I'll be going out in Vegas. Like, the lifestyle is incredible if it's for you. Like, you live out of a suit, you do live out of a suitcase, and you kind of feel like you don't settle. You do go home, you're out of a suitcase, and a few days later you're back out, and you know, you're on the other side of the world, and it can be quite lonely. It can be very, very lonely, but the job is just, I don't know, it's incredible experience. You're travelling the world and you're getting paid for it. Some of my best memories of my life are with people I've just met the other side of the world that I probably won't ever see again in my life, but we had the best experiences as cabin crew. Like, being in Bangkok in the back of a tuk-tuk, all 10 of us, like, jumping on each other, and they'd give us the aux code and we're blasting songs. And I remember being in Singapore in the world's highest rooftop bar, and it was Christmas, just before Christmas, and we'd come out and there was taxis with like folk coming out and banging Christmas songs, hats with trays of shots saying, come on, you want to ride with us? Guys, it's like, I can't explain the experiences, and when I talk about it now, I'm like, I wish I never left. Sometimes I wish I never left. Some days I wake up and I just wish I never left, because, you know, it was just great experiences, but a lot has came into my life from leaving there as well, and I'm very grateful for that. So people always love to ask, if you're cabin crew, are you in the Mile High Club? I'm like, no, I was single the whole time I was there at British Airways, and I was not interested in boys whatsoever. I just wanted to fly and travel and see the world. But did it happen? Like, did I see it happen? You see a lot of things go on which you're like, but as long as it don't involve me, I don't care. But I'm personally, no, not in the Mile High Club, but I know people who are, and a lot used to go on when people's wives or boyfriends or whatever was not there, which is not what I agree with. But cabin crew, like a lot of other places, do have a stigma about them, and yeah, it's true. It's true, it happens. People definitely get up to a lot of things down route. People always ask me, is it bitchy industry as well? And it can be quite catty and bitchy. You know, it can be, but it also is, are you going to get involved with it, or how are you going to deal with it? And I just used to kind of, you know, I'm not really into like that sort of stuff, so I just never used to get involved, but it definitely did used to happen. And I think I always remember this one female manager, and God knows why, she just did not like me for whatever reason. Like, she was so mean, like, it's actually a joke. Like, on the flight I was getting on with all of my customers. I got given like compliment cards and stuff like that. I think I even got a golden ticket, I don't know. But she was, this manager, she just didn't like me, but she had a bad reputation anyway. She literally pulled me to the side and was like, what's wrong? I was like, what? She was like, are you tired? I was like, no. This was on the way back from Toronto, by the way. She was like, are you tired? I was like, no. She was like, you looked really pretty on the way out, like, what happened? I was like, what do you mean? She was like, you know, your makeup, your hair, you know, but she just, like, anything she could do, she just picked at. I'm like, I'm on the end of an 8-hour flight, night flight. I may not look amazing, I am shattered. Like, honestly, she was just so mean. She made me cry because she was just so mean, and I felt like I couldn't say anything, and I honestly just wish that I'd said something now. You always end up regretting what you don't say, don't you? But I always think, you know what, confident women don't hate, and I just think people who are happy don't hate and be mean. Every dog has a day, don't they? So whatever. So cabin crew is quite stressful because you basically have to be the police, hospital and the fire brigade all in one while you're 37,000 feet in the air. We had loads of extensive training on medical scenarios, how to put out fires, how to restrain people, all of this. So, people always like, oh, have you ever had any really bad medical problems? Because people don't think medical problems happen that well, but when you're flying every single week, sometimes multiple times a week, you'd be surprised how many different scenarios happen. And I always remember this one. We were coming back from Cape Town, and we were over Africa at this point still, and this guy had basically collapsed. He was going into cardiac arrest. So obviously we've got the oxygen on him, we're trying to, you know, do whatever, and the captain's like, oh right, we're gonna have to land. So we landed in Accra, and like, he's on the floor, we're trying to get him to, like, you know, I think he went unconscious and everything at one point. And I remember somebody coming in, like, asking for G&T. I was like, are you serious right now? And then somebody else was like, is he gonna start breathing because I've got a connecting flight to catch? And flying will make you see the worst in people. Like, flying passengers are just something else. I've always said they're like the devil's spawn. They are not nice people. They are not nice people. You'll meet some lovely, lovely passengers as cabin crew, but honestly horrible. And you think, oh, honestly, I can't, there's no words. Passengers are horrible, horrible people. When we went to Bahamas, basically I was taking my mum with me, and we have this thing that we call Klingons. So if we're bringing someone with us, they're on like a staff ticket, on a standby ticket, and they're called Klingons, and I brought her with me. I had seniority, because it goes in seniority as well by the flight. I had seniority, so I checked, you have to check the flight going out and check the flight coming back. There's so much anxiety with bringing people unless you know the flight's going to be empty. I almost dreaded it, to be honest with you, and I checked the flights both ways. There were some tickets, but we get the jump seat tickets as well. I checked the jump seat tickets, and I knew my seniority, so I knew if anyone else was bringing them, I'd be okay. Brought my mom, but anyway, the person on the desk was basically had buggered it up and didn't let my mom come on, and let somebody else who had less seniority come onto the flight, which was really frustrating. So my mom was left at the airport, so she had to get back all the way from London, and she doesn't drive, so she had to get a coach. It was just horrible, and then I had to go on the flight, basically, like, you know, it's a lot of stress with that, and it's not always fair, and they don't always do things by the book either, which is very frustrating, because I wouldn't have brought her if that was the case, but what can you do? It's out of your control, isn't it? So bringing people can be great if you've got empty flights, but if the flights are not empty, it's so much stress, so stressful. One of the good things about British Airways, which I think Virgin may have something similar, is we used to have this thing called host. So if we were running out of money, we could take money out of our next paycheck, and we could do that down route as well. So we could do that in like different countries. Some of the hotels would let us take it out, and it would just come out of our next paycheck. Now that can obviously be dangerous, and I think some crew definitely maybe abused that and ended up a bit worse off because of it. I never really used to use it. I was always okay, I think, because I still lived at home and stuff like that. I had a lot of disposable income back then, so I was always okay. But yeah, it's great if you're running low or you really want something, but it can also put you in a world of trouble as well. The longer your flight, usually the longer you'll be down route. But sometimes it will be, when they say like 4-day trips, it will be like 1 day of travelling, and that might be like a night flight. So that might be, say, the 1st to the 2nd, and then you're landing on the 2nd, you go for the 3rd, but you might even fly on the 3rd night and then land in the 4th, and then that will still be classed as a 4-day trip. So sometimes they might sound Gucci, like, oh, 4-day trip in San Diego, but it's not always a 4-day trip. the longer you are down route, the more flying hours you have, because basically as soon as chocks are off, so as soon as the chock by the plane wheel is off, you start getting £3 per hour. I think you might even get £3 per hour as soon as you clock in for the briefing. I think it's £3 per hour as soon as you clock in to the briefing, and then it stops at chocks on. So when they put the chocks on, when you pull back in at the airport, then they stop it. But yeah, so if you're on like we used to do a Singapore-Sydney, which was a 9-day trip, so it would be 3 days in Singapore, 3 days in Sydney, or 2 days in, might have been 3 days in Sydney, and then I think it's like 3 days in Singapore, and then you come back. That was like a £600 trip. Like that was a lot. That was a good trip, so you kind of liked them. Although you're away from home, if you've got like family or boyfriends or whatever, you're actually getting paid quite a lot for that. So your pay goes on, it's not, you get like a set salary, but your salary is like really low, like £1,000 a month, and then you basically get your flying hours, which is added on top. So the more you're away from home, the more you get paid, basically, and the more you're staying down route. But there were times when I had like blocks of there and backs, or I had really early flights, and this was before I drove, and I'd literally just sleep in the airport, and I'd freeze, and oh god, I'd be so lonely. It was horrible. So there's definitely a lot of good and bad to cabin crew. It's so fun, there's so much experience and life experience there, but there's also a lot of loneliness and living out a suitcase, missing a lot of things, missing a lot of birthdays, weddings, you know, Christmases. People always say, like, do you ever have really bad turbulence? Yes. Weirdly, my worst turbulence was on my very, very last flight. I thought I was going to die. I thought British Airways was taking me down with them. I was coming back from San Diego. I think it was San Diego, Cape Town or San Diego. I think it was San Diego. And I remember being in the crew bunks, because we have our own bunks, like upstairs, and I was asleep. And it was like, all I could hear was like, I started smacking each side of the bunk. Everybody was screaming. I could hear the passengers downstairs screaming. Everybody in the crew bunks, I could hear them crying and screaming. When I say, like, the captain, if the captain tells the crew to sit down and put their seatbelts on, then you know it's going down, because if the crew's got to sit down, then the turbulence is going to be really bad. And it was really bad. Like, I remember thinking, as I was lying there in the dark in this bunk, being like, oh my god, I'm going to die on my last flight. It is my last flight and I'm going to die. It was pretty surreal, really, but it was okay. We got through it in the end. But yeah, I just thought BA is really going to take me down with them on this last flight. I've got a little bit of memorabilia here. These were my wings. As crew, you only get half the wing, and then if you're flight crew, like the pilots, you get the other wing here as well. I kept my wings. I kept my at Thomson we called them Nickies. I don't think they're called Nickies at BA. I can't remember what we called them at BA. I don't think we called them Nickies. I can't remember what we called them. We used to tie them and then tuck them in like that. Oh my god. Makes me really sad now when I think about it. I also still have my Thomson one here as well. And this one we used to just like tie there. Do we do it again? We'd like fluff it. Yeah, I'm not doing it very good. I'm not doing it properly, but god, it just made me really, really sad when I see it. Guys, I hope this has been a little bit helpful. I feel like I've just rabbled on about my experiences. If you want me to answer any more cabin crew questions, any specific questions, let me know. Just drop them down in the comments and I can do another video. If you want to see some pictures, some experiences, let me know. But if you want any specific questions answered, especially if it's about British Airways, I can really help there. But cabin crew is kind of like a whole across the board, so it might help even if you're joining another airline. Let me know, just drop them all down below. Don't forget to subscribe, give this video a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!